So in March 2016, there was this terrorist type attack that happened at a military base, and this guy by the name of Ayan Hassan Ali went in and attacked some soldiers. But it just turns out that the judge has found him not guilty and has acquitted him of terror charges, and he's not criminally responsible. So the article goes into it, and he says like a man with schizophrenia who attacked soldiers at a military recruitment center in Toronto has been acquitted of terror-related charges and found not criminally responsible for lesser offenses due to mental illness. So, this goes against the entire narrative of people that are saying it's only white people that get away with insanity charges. Like this guy, he said he was doing this for like ISIS, right? He wasn't in direct contact with them, but he said it was because of like the Quran, what the Quran was saying. But they're like, oh, because he was crazy, he misinterpreted it, and it's because he's insane. But like I was saying in my other video, they never show you circumstances where either white people are getting shot by cops, getting roughed up by them, or stories where black people or whatever get off with insanity pleas. So they only push the one thing, so that's all you see and that's all you think happens. But this guy was pretty much a terrorist. I'm surprised that the judge let him off because the things that he did and said all fall in line with what a terrorist does. And just because they're not directly in contact with ISIS doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't still not terror related. Like he said, he did this to Canada because Canada is invading other people's lands or Muslim lands. So that is directly in line with what the Quran says to do. But now all of a sudden, this guy is crazy. But, I don't think he is specifically, but it just goes to show you that they can get away with it, and we're not living in some white supremacy, because if that was the case, this guy would be in jail. But it goes on, and it's like Judge Ian MacDonald says whatever the guy's name is, actions in 2016 do not fit the intended scope of Canadian terrorism law. So this could also be sometimes lawyers or whatever, they go for too high of a fucking charge. But I don't think in this case it actually was, because everything that he did was, he attacked a military base, went after soldiers, said he did it because of Canada being in Muslim lands, quoted the Quran, this falls directly in line with the terrorism charge. But this judge is just a fucking idiot. But Ali had pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of attempted murder, 3 counts of assault with a weapon, 2 counts of assault causing bodily harm, and 1 count of carrying a weapon for the purpose of committing an offense, all for the benefit or at the direction of a terror organization. So that last line is probably what got them, because he's like, well, he did all these things, he stabbed people, he attacked people, did this and that, but you said it was before terror organization, so it's all null and void now. So, I think this guy may still suffer charges later, but everything that he was charged with recently was definitely acquitted. But it goes on. It's like his lawyer had argued that because he committed his actions alone and had never been in contact with any terror groups, he should be found not guilty on the terror charges. They also argued he should be found not criminally responsible for the lesser included offenses of attempted murder, assault, and weapons offense. Like, really? You're going to get off scot-free because they were wrong about the terrorism thing, which I don't think they were. The prosecution argued that Canadian terror laws could apply to Ali because he acted as a terrorist group of one. The judge ruled against the Crown's argument, saying the federal government's intention behind terrorism laws must be taken into account. So like I was saying, it could be just they were a little bit too overzealous with their charge, but I think that just because somebody doesn't have contact with ISIS, if they're inspired by it, if they tell you the reason they're doing it is because you are in their lands, like that falls under terrorism, because terrorism is done usually for to achieve something political. So that is something political, getting Canadians out of their lands, right? So that should fall under terrorism. But according to, on March 14, 2016, Ali entered a Canadian Force Recruitment Office in North Toronto at 4900 Yonge Street, armed with a knife, and attacked uniformed soldiers, leaving at least 2 with minor injuries. He was then overpowered and subdued. According to an agreed statement of facts presented by the Crown defense at trial, Ali repeatedly punched and slashed at one soldier, leaving the man with a 3-inch gash on his arm. Terror law is not intended for lone wolves. It's like Ali tried to stab or slash 3 other military personnel, one of whom was left with bruises and small, so luckily not a lot of people were killed, right? But that doesn't take away what he was attempting to do. And to let this guy pretty much go scot-free is setting a pretty bad precedent, letting you know that Canada is lax on these people, which of course we are. Trudeau wants to bring in ISIS members into Canada because he thinks they're going to be good at reintegrating, because he's a retarded idiot. But the attack was, Ali tried to stab. The attack was motivated by the defendant's radical religious and ideological beliefs, but there is no dispute that the formation of those beliefs was in large part precipitated by mental disorder, the judge says in his decision. So he's saying, like, what is the judge really saying here? It's like, if you are crazy and you read the Quran, you're going to go kill people. So that is a problem right there with the Quran, because if he was crazy and he was just reading Buddhism or Christianity or pretty much any other religion, he wouldn't have done all these things. So then that pretty much lets us know that the Quran is definitely a shitty fucking religion or book, because if crazy people do read it, like the judge is pretty much saying, they're going to go out and kill people, and it's not really their fault because the book tells them to do it and they're insane, blah blah blah, right? So one of the beliefs that the defendant had formed in his mentally disordered state was that killing Canadian military personnel was justified because the military was fighting in Muslim lands. So this is exactly what they say. After the verdict was handed down, Maureen Addy, one of Ali's defense lawyers, spoke about the case outside the courthouse, pointing out the findings of 2 psychiatrists, one of the Crown and one of the defense. They both decided that his relationship with Islam began tied up with his schizophrenia, and he sat alone in his room for years hearing voices and conflating in his mind the voices that he was hearing and the symptoms of schizophrenia with messages of radical Islam, she said. On Monday, McDonald said there was no evidence of any connection between Ali and any other person in the group. So this is all this, because he never talked to anybody, he's not a terrorist, so all these other charges get dropped, which is bullshit. You can still be a terrorist of one, in my opinion. The statement had Nader Hassan, one of Ali's lawyers, questioning why his client was charged with terrorism to begin with. He's acting all like self-righteous. Like, how could you even? Because, he was doing a terrorist act. That's why he was charged with terrorism. But I think this was a case where the Crown overreached, he said. Then that is a possibility, but I don't think so. They had someone who they thought looked the part of the terrorist, when in reality they had someone who committed a terrible, terrible act, who was mentally ill, and they should have proceeded in that fashion rather than overreaching for terrorism, he said. Ali has been in secure treatment facility, blah, blah, and the Ontario board will review what to do with him later. But, this guy got a slap on the wrist, and this goes against the whole Sean King people with their whole narrative saying like, it's only white people who get away. It's only white people who don't get shot by police. Whereas this guy stabbed multiple police officers, and he's black, he's got very dark skin, did all this shit, and the cops still apprehended him. After he stabbed 1 or 2 people, they had every justification to shoot him right then and there, but they did not. Okay, so maybe our cops are trained better than American cops and stuff as well. But at the same time, it's like, they pull that narrative in Canada too, like the white supremacy bullshit, and saying, people are treated differently by the police. And they're trying to do that in Toronto and stuff now. But this is more or less proof that, like, it's bullshit. This guy got away with schizophrenia with the judge. So it's not just white people who get away with the crazy card. It's other people too. But like the media does, they don't like to show you when white people are being attacked by the cops. So when they're being shot by the cops, when they're, when black people are getting away with, doing all this shit, or when they get labeled crazy and get charges dropped. Like, that happens to other people too, but we just don't see it as much. They don't make as much of a big deal. So we're under the impression that it's just only being targeted to one group, and that just creates resentment from that group to the main group. And then, the more tensions there are between us, the more control that the government, that our masters, whatever, have over us. Because the longer we're fighting with each other, the longer we're letting these people have control over us, the longer we're letting them take advantage of us. Because we're worrying about stupid, menial things, like just things that we should already have gotten over by now. And, and we're letting the elites or whatever go around, do whatever the fuck they want, fuck us over, fuck up the economy, fuck up the jobs, create globalism. So eventually there's going to be just a worker class and a bunch of fucking rich people. Like, let's worry about the things that actually do matter. But, instead of getting all up in arms about, white people being labeled as crazy when they are in fact crazy. And this guy, he may be completely crazy and stuff. I still think that a lot of the evidence was against him in this situation, but yeah, sometimes they are crazy and shit. So, let's not always jump to conclusions and stuff, and let's not always assume that just because white people get labeled as insane when they do go and kill a bunch of people, it's not necessarily the system that is just giving them an easy hand. Because even though, that what happened in Las Vegas, what happened in all these other places, like, there was nothing that they could really connect them to that was equivalent to ISIS and the type of violence that they are promoting. Like, in Canada here, CSIS, the RCMP was arguing with the government because the government was trying to make this whole crazy right-wing thing, right-wing extremists, like something for Canada to watch out for, and they wanted the RCMP and all these people to go in and do research. But they're all pushing back, saying that, no, this is not a threat. There is no threat from these people to Canada whatsoever. There's no organization. The only threat to Canada is from Islamic terrorism, like this fucking guy was trying to do, right? He got away with the crazy case. Maybe he is crazy, but, like I said before, it just shows you that, yeah, we're not a white supremacist because we let this guy off the hook with it. The Crown, the judge, they let him off the hook, which, in my opinion, he shouldn't have been. It sounds like what he did was not him being crazy and shit. I think it was the Quran, him reading the book, believing in Islam, and what America and all that stuff is doing to these countries. And they are, in fact, bombing these countries. They are, in fact, like Canada, not so much. But we get lumped in with you guys, right? Sweden and all these other places get lumped in because then they view all white people as white people, right? It's funny. It's like, it's all confusing, right, for people that what is white? What is white? But it's like, no, we all know, what is white, because when you go and you point out and be like, oh, these white people, you know what it is. Don't pretend like you don't, because it's like I said, Canada and other these countries get blamed for what America does because people just see similar looking people and attribute what they do to us. So, it's all racism and shit on their part too. But nonetheless, I just thought I'd bring this to your attention to show you that yes, it's not all completely lopsided, and people, whether they are white or not, can get away with the schizophrenia plea and the crazy plea, right? And like I said, maybe he was crazy, and maybe the lawyers did overreach in this specific case, and that kind of fucked them. But nonetheless, that's all I pretty much had to say. If you like my content, subscribe and have a good day. See ya.